Greetings, fellow humans. I'm MartianBuu, and today I am back from my road trip, and my computer is fixed. So, if you didn't know, I recently went on a road trip to Sacramento Pokemon Regional Championships with my dad and our friend. I went 3-1-5. That is 3 wins, 1 loss, and 5 ties, which I have a lot to say about, but that's a different video. Overall, I'm not invested enough these days to where I was expecting to actually do very well. I came there to enjoy playing some cards in person and spend time with my dad, and both of those aspects went very well. So yeah, I had a blast. I'm looking forward to the next one. As for my computer, right before I left for the road trip last week, my computer crapped out on me again, and I didn't have time to troubleshoot why or get that resolved. So that's why I didn't stream at all last week, and I think I only posted a couple YouTube videos. But I took the computer back in. It was my solid state drive, was apparently a lemon, so I got a new one of those. I'm wondering if you remember from a few weeks back, I had to switch out my motherboard, and I had much less confidence in the person who talked to me about that. So I'm wondering if actually changing out the motherboard was not necessary and the problem was the solid state drive all along, in which case I bought a new motherboard and went through all the effort of switching it out for nothing. So anyways, I was much happier with the person who helped me this time. I felt like they knew what they were doing, and more importantly, they were invested in helping me. And my computer appears to be operating just fine. So the moral of that story is, if you are seeking a consultation on something that you are relatively ignorant of, and the person does not seem super invested, and the things that they say don't make 100% sense, seek a second opinion. So yeah, I'm hoping to hit the rest of this week really strong. We'll do some streams, we'll do some videos, and we have a lot of new content to play with already. So there was a big announcement today as far as the next expansion and as far as Twist. A lot to talk about there. Let's get right into it. All right, so this is patch 27.6 notes. Today we can pre-purchase the expansion. The expansion is Showdown in the Badlands. So the Badlands, for those of you who didn't play World of Warcraft, it's the place where Oldemon is, I think. It's like Ulduar and Oldham, places we've been to in Hearthstone. I don't know how much of that is going to be present in this expansion because we just had an Ulda expansion, but it's very barren. It's like a desert. So Showdown in the Badlands has a very Wild West theme that we'll see from some of the cards here. We know some of them so far, and kind of like a Gold Rush era type of vibe to it. So everyone's digging around for stuff. We have a couple new keywords. So yeah, you can pre-purchase this today. It comes with new expansion packs, golden new expansion packs, and also when I got this today, a third pack showed up. I don't know what that pack is because you can't like mouse over it and say it. All it says is you can open it in November. So you get more from your pre-purchase than it even says here. There's some other kind of mystery pack. I don't know what it is yet. So then if you click on the announcement blog here, it gives you like a little bit more information, and you can see that it's going to come out on November 14th. So that's when the new expansion is. Log in today. You get to play with Thunderbringer. It's an 8 mana 6/6 elemental beast. Taunt, death rattle, summon an elemental and a beast from your deck. Seems pretty aggressively fair for wild. I'm not sure. Like obviously you want to build a N'Zoth beast elemental deck with this if you're going to play it in wild, but it could be that there's a big enough beast and a big enough elemental that it ends up being fantastic tempo depending on how your deck's built anyway. So I'll definitely be fiddling with that tomorrow. We'll see if we can't figure out a nice place for it in wild, but it looks cool. It's a pretty card. It seems a little the pre-expansion legendaries have felt very unique so far, and this feels pretty vanilla for a pre-expansion legendary. I don't want to downplay it. Like it's cool, we get a free legendary, and it's got a nice fun effect that there'll be some stuff to play around with. But like when you compare it to things like Renathal and even all the way back to Marin the Fox, it feels like it does stuff we've seen before, compared to ETC and all that type of stuff. Even Dungar, I felt was pretty unique. But anyways, this will be cool. You can play around with that today. Maybe you can come up with some spicy stuff for standard. So here I have all of the Showdown in the Badlands cards that were revealed today so far. We have Reap What You Sow, which is a single Frost Rune Death Knight card. It's got the new keyword Excavate on it. So you excavate a treasure, dig for increasingly rarer treasures, resets after the highest rarity. So if you look here, these are all the treasures you can excavate. I do think that there are specific ones to the classes that can excavate. Like I think that there's a legendary tier that's not listed here. So I have this one. I guess like they all start off with the neutral runs, and then the classes that excavate will each have their own legendary one. That's the sense I'm getting from the information I have so far, so maybe that's not incomplete. But anyways, so first you'll get a common treasure that's here on the first line, and then you'll get a rare one, then you get an epic one, and the only legendary one I've seen was a Death Knight one. So I assume, yeah, you'll go from the neutral, commons, rares, and epics, and then on your fourth dig you'll get a legendary. Then once you've done that, it resets and you excavate all over again from common. So yeah, looking back at the blog here, 5 classes are working with Bloodrock Mining Company, Death Knight, Mage, Rogue, Warlock, and Warrior. These expert miners are able to get even deeper into in their excavations. Each of these classes has a specific 4-mana legendary excavate treasure that they get when they excavate the 4th time. All right, so it doesn't list them all, but each of those ones does have one further excavation, and it looks like all classes can excavate from this. And then it's just those ones get the extra layer. All right, so yeah, 3 mana for deal 3 damage, and then you get an excavated treasure, especially on the first time. I feel like this is really good. The extra mana to get one of those like really cheap, cost-efficient effects I think is going to be sweet. Then we have Harrowing Ox, which is a 7 mana 7/7 Death Knight card. If you've excavated twice, your next card this turn costs 7 less, so that's pretty good. All you have to do is excavate twice, and then you get a 7 mana 7/7 taunt, and you need to play something else up to 7 that costs nothing. So you're like playing this on 7 and then Frostworm's Fury. That seems really strong to me. So yeah, this ought to be really good. We have Messenger Buzzard for Hunter. It's a 2 mana 1/2 draw a beast, give your minions in your hand +1/+1. Interesting. I don't know how good that'll be. Theldurin the Lost. 2015 we got some Highlander cards. In 2019 we got some Highlander cards, and now it's 2023, 4 years later again, and we have some Highlander cards. So this will be another Highlander set. The classes that don't get the special excavations are getting the Highlander cards. So Hunter is getting one, Demon Hunter's getting their first one, Priest is getting one, Paladin and Druid are getting another one, and then Shaman's gonna get its first one. Theldurin the Lost is interesting. So it's 4 mana 3/4. Battlecry, if your deck has no duplicates, gain immune this turn and attack all enemies. So it's if you're a Highlander deck, it is both a big board clear and it also damages your opponent's face, which I think is incredibly strong. This is really good. And it's much like Bran in the way that it's not just a value or defensive Highlander card like the other classes usually have. This is a tempo burst damage card like Bran was. Blast Mage Miner, 6 mana 4/4 Battlecry, excavate a treasure. For each card in your hand, deal 1 damage to a random enemy. So yeah, we've had a very similar card before, but this one has the extra advantage of giving you a card in hand to add to that damage, so that seems pretty good. Then we have Elise Badlands Savior. Elise is a Highlander card, so 8 mana 5/5. If your deck has no duplicates, summon 4/4 copies of 4 random minions in your deck. And this is interesting because it's also a tempo card. I don't know how we'd build for that in Wild because we tend to go battle cries, and so like we're not going to get a lot of value off of these 4/4s as far as their effects go. But let's say you get nothing with a text box that's worth having off of this. You've still played an 8 mana 5/5 and 16/16 worth of bonus bodies. So it's interesting. And even if, you know, like you got like Dirty Rat in there, maybe one of them will have taunt. Potentially we start building more for death rattles or onboard effects, or maybe this is just too slow for Wild, we don't run it at all. But depending on how standard goes, maybe this will be pretty cool there. I think this is just really strong for standard, right? That's so much stats for one card. For Shaman we have Dehydrate, so 3 mana, lifesteal, deal 4 damage to a minion. Quick Draw costs 1. So Quick Draw is the other new keyword this expansion. It just means if you drew that this turn, then it has the bonus effect. So it's we saw that on I forget his name. This is 6 mana 3/3 from, I believe, Ashes. Destroy a minion, or if you drew it that turn, destroy all minions. But anyways, yeah, lifesteal, deal 4 damage to a minion. That is worse than the title surge card the Shaman already has. Spoilers. And Quick Draw, it'll actually cost 1 instead. So now it's better, right? Because if you for 1, this effect is really, really good, and for 3, it's okay. So it's not like a strictly similar Penance Drain Soul. It's potentially better than those. Living Prairie. Oh, 5 mana, 5/4 elemental. If you played an elemental last turn, summon 2 3/3 cows with rush. Interesting. So those aren't elementals, they're like beasts probably. We can maybe check. Yeah, look. That's pretty funny. So yeah, it's 5 mana, 5/4 2 3/3 cows with rush. Yeah, that'll be standard playable maybe. Trolley Problem for Warlock. So 3 mana, discard your lowest cost spell, summon 2 3/3 tram cars with rush. 3 mana for 2 3/3 cars with rush. And then depending on how you built your deck, you get to draw some cards or something. Or maybe remove an enemy minion, or, you know, deal some burst damage. So this is probably pretty good in Wild. And then for Quick Draw, you don't discard, which is like sometimes good, sometimes bad. It's pretty interesting. So that's an interesting card. Maybe that'll see some play in Standard. Oh, it's the Trolley Problem. If only there were thousands of hypotheticals to prepare me for this moment. Yep. There you go. For some neutrals, we have Kobold Miner. You Battlecry, Excavate a treasure. Very reminiscent of the Lackey card. The class ones all felt really strong, and then you get the neutral one. It's like, yeah, I need Lackeys, so I guess I'll run this. Sheriff Barrel Brim. 4 mana, 4/4. Battlecry. If you have 20 or less health, open the Badlands Jail. So here's the Badlands Jail. If you open it, does that mean it goes to your hand, or do you put it on the field automatically? I don't know what that means. I don't know if you get it or if it goes onto the field. Probably makes a big difference. I'm gonna go ahead and assume it just puts it on the field. So yeah, you can make a minion go dormant for 3 turns. That is pretty interesting. So yeah, you're like putting them in jail. That's cool. Then we have Thunderbringer. We talked about that, and that's all the ones that I've seen that we've revealed so far. If you scroll down, you see the Twist update to Wonderful Ungoro. So it's Twist Wonders plus Ungoro. Something to note: the Caverns Below is banned in this Twist season, which I think is fantastic. I think the Caverns Below was the big stain on what was otherwise one of the most beloved expansions of all time. Maybe you liked Caverns Below and everything I just said sickens you, but I think for the most part, the Caverns Below is not something we wanted added to Twist. So it's really cool that they're adding everything else other than that. But they're also doing a ton of updates for the Ungoro expansion. So yeah, we have a giant swath of Ungoro cards that actually got adjusted. Here we have Jungle Giants, which used to require you to summon 5 minions, but now only requires you to summon 4. In Wild, that's a pretty big change because with Cursed Disciple, you would want to get that off of Oaken Summons. And then that is a 5/1, and its Death Rattle makes another 5/1. So that's now half the requirement for the quest instead of a full 5. And now we have Scourge Rager, which is 5/4 Reborn that costs 3. So now you get out any 2 of those and your Jungle Giants is complete. It's way easier, way cleaner as far as mechanically, and that'll be pretty interesting to mess around with. I don't think it's gonna make like a big difference as far as as far as Wild goes competitively, but if you like Jungle Giants, it's going to feel way more fun to meme around with. Evolving Spores is going down a mana. I'm not sure how much of a difference that's going to make in Wild because Adapt is so random, and like Token Druid already isn't much of a thing, but maybe in Twist that's a big improvement. Verdant Longneck is getting 1 more health. I imagine that I'll see about as much play in Wild as it does, but in Twist, maybe that's enough to make it more interesting. Giant Anaconda is getting Taunt. Same deal. I don't think that this is going to make it Wild playable, but it's going to be pretty interesting for Twist, maybe. It's kind of cool. Hadronox works with this now. And unlike some other possibly conflicting things, it's not that bad to get this off of Witching Hour. And then we have Tyrantus, which is getting +2/+2 and also Taunt, which is much more interesting. Like as a 10 mana 12/12 that couldn't be targeted. It was an interesting concept at the time, but very vanilla by today's standards. With the additional stats and also Taunt, not only does this put Sogoth in shambles, but it's actually kind of an interesting thing to play. Again, not going to be a Wild thing probably, but I could see this being a monster in Twist. Then for Hunter, Stampede is going to 0. This could be good at 0. Jeweled Macaw was listed, but we already have this as a 1/2 in the core set, so yeah. Raptor Hatchling's Token is going from a 4/3 to a 4/5. Maybe some kind of Undertaker shenanigans in Twist. If you can draw a lot, I could see that being all right. Queen Carnassa is going to shuffle 20 raptors into your deck, and she also gains Rush. I'm actually really excited to play with this. I've always liked this card. I crafted a gold right away because I was one of the people who was expecting it to be broken. For those of you who didn't play back then, everyone thought that the Hunter quest was going to be broken and the Rogue quest was going to be terrible. So we were quite wrong about that. But I've had this golden since Ungoro, and like it was never good. In Twist though, getting the 5 mana 8/8 rush, and you also have all those ones that are pretty good, I could see this being somewhat playable. So I'm looking forward to that. Dinomancy is going to make your hero power give a beast +3/+3 instead of just +2/+2. I don't expect this to be all that great. I think this either needed to go to 1 or it needed to like be on a minion, you know what I mean? Like if this was a 2 mana 2/2 battle cry, that effect, that might be all right, but this is 0 tempo, so you can't really build around it because you can't tutor it. You could just like throw in a one-off copy, but I think it would need to cost 1. Still though, the hero power is much better at +3/+3. It could be that throwing in a one of this will be interesting. Grievous Bite is going to deal 3 damage to the center minion now instead of just 2. That's pretty good. Tolvir Warden is coming down a mana and a health, so that'll help get you your 1-cost minions that you need to power up your Queen Carnassa quest. Turn 4 is so much sooner than turn 5. Swamp King Dread is going from 7 mana to 6 mana. I actually do think that this will see play in Wild because people experimented with this a lot after Harpoon came out and Beast Hunter was on the map. So I think if Beast Hunter starts making appearances again, this could very well see play there. Then for Mage, Pyros is getting an update. The second stage, which previously cost 6, is going to cost 4. And the third stage that usually cost 10 is going to cost 8. It does make it not a strictly worse Astalor because the second stage is a lot more stats for a turn sooner, but it's otherwise a strictly worse Astalor. But I think it'll still be cool, especially considering N'Zoth and Twist. I think that the Pyros will be fun. Shimmering Tempest is going from Death Rattle, add a random mage spell to your hand, to Battle Cry, add a random mage spell to your hand, and it's getting an extra health. Obviously, by today's standards, still nowhere good enough, but for the time, this card was already like kind of maybe a consideration for that deck, and now I would say it's probably going to be very played in any quest mage deck you try to make in Twist. And then Meteor is now going to deal 4 damage to adjacent minions instead of just 3. Adaptation is going to 0, which is kind of funny because it vaguely got played in Odd Paladin during Dark Moon Fair. So now Odd Paladin can't use it, but that's fine, like we're past that. For 0 mana, is adapter friendly minion good? It actually might be, especially when you consider Kotori, which when you target him with something, it'll hit one of your other minions out. Having a 0 mana thing with a decent effect to do that with is probably pretty good. I could definitely see this scene play in Wild. The last Kaleidosaur is going from costing 6 spells to costing only 5 to activate Galvadon. Galvadon also is going from a 5/5 to an 8/8, so that ought to be pretty good in Twist, I imagine. Could even be good in Wild, I don't know. Like Galvadon kind of gets slept on for its effects just because it was just a little bit too much to ask to build your deck around that, but we've had a lot more stuff come out, and now we're getting like this buff to adaptation, reduction in the cost of spells, and Galvadon's going to have more health. It could be that Kaleidosaur is at least all right enough to enjoy in Wild with these buffs. Hydrologist is now Battlecry, discover and cast a secret. I don't know how much that matters. So instead of having to pay the mana for your Paladin secret, now you just get it out. I mean, it probably matters a lot, right? Like it goes from a 3 mana effect to a 2 mana effect. It could be pretty good. I was just trying to think if there was a reason that you'd want to actually cast the secret for this card, and maybe there isn't, so probably a good change. I always really liked this one. It's an example of a tech card that I think is actually pretty cool because I don't like top-down tech cards that are designed to say specifically hose this one deck, but like where you have to get creative with it and put a card in your deck that's meant to be its own thing. It improves a specific matchup and is otherwise kind of decent to have around. Hydrologist is that type of thing. So what I used to do back in the Ungoro days is play this to get eye for an eye against Quest Mage so I can get around the ice block. Then we have Lightfuse Stegodon, which is going from a 4 mana 3/4 to a 3 mana 3/3, which is huge because now you can play it in Odd Paladin. So yeah, I'm gonna have to build that soon. Vine Cleaver is going from 7 mana to 6 mana, which is pretty interesting. The thing is, even Paladin just lost one of its recruit payoffs, but that's probably fine because it has bridge and it has Crusader aura. It doesn't really need light fuse Stegodon. But yeah, having Vine Cleaver to make recruits and be a 4/3 weapon could be all right in an even Paladin. Do I expect this to start seeing play in Wild? Probably not, but it'll be pretty good for Twist at least. Then Dino Size is getting changed to 7 mana, and instead of making something a 10/10, it makes it a 7/14, which is a reference to Ultrasaur. This is a really funny change. For 7 mana, how good is that? I think probably really good, right? Like, it makes the body so much bigger. If you have a Righteous Protector out, it gets, you know, unstoppable. It's going to be fun to play with in Wild at the very least. I don't know if it's going to actually be good, but it seems really strong to me, at least in Twist. And yeah, I'm looking forward to playing with that. For Priest, we have Awaken the Makers, which is going from requiring 7 Death Rattle minions to only requiring 6. So that could be a good improvement to get yourself your 40 HP Reno. Crystalline Oracle is going from a 1/1 to a 1/2. We saw the Battlecry one. I forget its name, but it's 1 mana 1/2. Get a card from your opponent's deck, Battlecry. So when that went from a 1/1 to a 1/2, it started seeing play. Is that enough for Death Rattle, which is generally worse than Battlecry, to see play? I don't know, at least in Wild, but maybe with the Awaken the Makers buff, this is pretty good now. I'm certainly really excited to try it. I think it'll be sweet. This isn't a buff, but I feel like I should mention it. Inner Fire wasn't a thing until Shadow Visions was printed. So Inner Fire Priest in Twist might actually be really good now that Shadow Visions is going to be in the pool. Curious Glimmerroot is going from a 3 mana 3/3 to a 3 mana 3/4. Mirage Collar is kind of nuts. So it's 3 mana 2/3, that's the same. But you're going from choose a friendly minion to just choose a minion, summon a 1/1 copy of it. And the reason that that's really good is because of all the Titan effects that are running around. So if your opponent plays a Titan, now Mirage Collar just gets you a 1/1 copy of that, and you get to like Yogg them back or something. So Mirage Collar, absolute nuts and wild. I think that this will probably see a lot of play. As far as Twist, I'm not as confident, but it's not like it was a bad effect before. It could be good. Tortolan Shellraiser is going from 4 mana to 3 mana. And this might have actually had 6 health before, I don't quite remember, but either way, going down to 3 mana with this effect is much better. Is it Wild playable? Probably not, but it'll be a consideration if you're trying to build the Amara deck, and in Twist it ought to be really good. Lyra is going from 5 mana to 4 mana, which is very exciting. I always liked Lyra. I really liked Lyra more back in the day when the effect was a little bit more unique, so that was really fun. Now we see a lot of stuff like this, and the random generation can be a little bit tiresome, especially in Wild, where if any of this stuff approaches playability, they play like a jillion things. So depending on your playstyle, you might be looking forward to that or not. But especially in Twist, I think I'm really excited to play with Lyra. It's gonna be cool. Free from Amber is going from 8 mana to 7 mana. Probably good in Twist. I don't know about Wild. Then for Rogue, we have Biteweed. So this is the little Edwin Van Leaf. It's going from 1 health to 2 health. And if you remember from, I believe, Dark Moon Fair, it saw a little bit of play because Corvette was championing it. So it was like almost playable because of Foxy Fraud. And you know, it fell off pretty quick, and then they came out with that location. There was no reason to run it. Is 1 health enough to make the difference? I would assume not, but maybe enough for Twist. And Venom Weapon is going from 3 mana to 2 mana. Don't know how I feel about that. It's probably bad, but maybe it's good. It does get discounted by prep now, and 2 mana is a lot less to ask for that type of effect, so giving it to a Kingsbane, because like if you get the attack so high already, you basically can burst through anything. So yeah, I don't know that this will see any play. Mimic Pod though, going from 3 mana to 2 mana, draw a card, then add a copy of it to your hand. There are a lot of very cantrippy, miracle-y rogues that pop up here and there. And I think getting an extra copy of your cards is pretty valuable in those type of decks. Like you could get an extra Shadow Step or an extra Arcane Giant or something like that. So for Wild, I could see 2 mana being enough to make Miracle Mimic Pod a thing. Razor Petal Lasher. Okay, so the Razor Petal cards, the petals are going to deal 2 damage instead of 1. So I think they're both a lot better. Maybe just Lasher. So 2 mana, 2/2, get a 1 mana deal 2 is all right, at least for Twist. So Volley, instead of the immediate 2/2, you get a second petal, which could be really good for a Miracle deck. That's 3 discounts on Giant by itself. All right, so Obsidian Shard is going from 4 mana 3/3, cost 1 less for each card you've played from another class, to cost 1 less for each non-rogue class card you've added to your hand. So now you only have to generate the cards you don't have to actually also cast them to get the discount on an Obsidian Shard. And I think that's pretty good. That might be better than Bizarre Burglary. I've frequently been tempted to play Obsidian Shard in some of these Thief Rogue lists because I think it was almost playable before, but usually if I'm going to do that, I end up going for Bizarre Burglary anyway, and I don't want to have Bizarre Burglary and Obsidian Shard. But this is now a much easier effect, right? You just generate a few cards and suddenly you have a 0 mana 3/3 weapon you can play, which is good for playing free things for Edwin. It's good for just having a 3/3 weapon for no mana. So I could see this being really, really good even in Wild, but Twist, certainly I would expect this to see some play. Then Sharezen Corpse Flower, which is a personal favorite card of mine, is going from 5 attack to 6 attack, and I don't expect that to really make much of a difference. I think that we wanted the mana to go down, or we wanted you to have to play less cards to revive it, or both, for it to see play in Wild. But yeah, it'll be fun for Twist. I'm looking forward to that. Then for Shaman, we are going from 10 Murlocs to 8 Murlocs for Unite the Murlocs to get Megafin. Spirit Echo is going from 3 mana to 2 mana. This is a card that was seeing some play when Primal Engineer was in Shaman decks because it is a nature spell, and getting your stuff back is valuable. So maybe at 1 less mana, this is all right, but you have to cut things like Cold Storage to make Primal Engineer good, so hard to say. Tidal Surge is going from dealing 4 to dealing 5. So this is the most buffed card in history, right? It went from 4 mana, deal 4 damage, gain 4 health, to 4 mana, deal 4 damage, lifesteal, to 3 mana, deal 4 damage, lifesteal, and now 3 mana, deal 5 damage, lifesteal. So it's pretty funny that this card got buffed so many times. Do I think this will be good? I think this is potentially pretty good for Wild. I'm looking forward to that. Stone Sentinel is getting buffed by 2 mana. So this came out in the same set as Blaze Caller, and Blaze Caller saw a little bit of play at 7 and kind of took over the spot, so Stone Sentinel really couldn't participate. But yeah, so if you played an elemental in the last turn, you get your 4/4 and you get 2/2/3s with taunt, and I think at 5 that is much better. Is it enough to see play in Wild? Probably not, but it's pretty exciting for Twist. Maybe we can finally get an elemental shaman going. Volcano is going from Overload 2 to Overload 1. I think that's pretty good. We do have the one that only hits enemies, which is probably still better for Wild. Volcano was already a decent spell for its time at Overload 2, and now at Overload 1 it'll be that much better. Calamos is going from 8 mana to 7 mana, which is pretty cool. Again, not super sure that this will be enough to make the difference in Wild, but for Twist at least, I think that's a really sweet change. Chittering Tunneler is going from a 3 mana 3/3 to a 2 mana 2/2. Could be all right in Twist. Is this good at 2 enough to see play in the Demon Seed? Probably not, but maybe. You could discover some pretty high cost spells with this. Ravenous Pterodax is going from a 4 mana 4/4 to a 3 mana 3/3. This is pretty good because it means that it comes down the turn right after the egg. So you can play your Nerubian Egg on 2, and then you can play this right away on 3 and adapt twice. So I think for a zoo deck, at least in Twist, this could be pretty good. All right, Feeding Time is getting a huge facelift. So this was 5 mana, deal 3 damage to a minion, summon 3 1/1s before. Now it's going down a mana, and you're going to adapt the tokens, which is just a huge change. So it's like a worse demonic assault if you hit taunt, but say you hit +1/+1, then you paid 4 mana to deal 3 damage and get 3 2/2s. That's pretty good, especially for the time. Getting the poisonous pretty good, getting the death rattle is really good, so that each of those dies you get the 1/1s, and getting +3 health, 4 mana for make 3 1/4s is pretty good. I don't know that this is competitive compared to demonic assault in Wild, and demonic assault is already kind of but maybe, especially in Reno even Warlock, this could be a consideration. I could easily see this making the cut in there. Cruel Dynamancer is going from 6 mana to 5 mana, which I think is bittersweet, right? Because before you play it with Expired Merchant and Matron, and you can run Hand of Gul'dan, and half the time it'll hit Dynamancer. Whereas now, if you have Hand of Gul'dan, you never hit Dynamancer. So for those of you who don't know, the Cruel Dynamancer deck, you discard only a Dynamancer as far as minions go. And then once you play your other Dynamancer, its Death Rattle will always summon a Dynamancer, which will always summon a Dynamancer. So like you get infinite Dynamancers. You can play with Umbra and fill your board. So yeah, you would run Hand of Gul'dan and 6 mana Dynamancers. So maybe you don't run Hand of Gul'dan now, or maybe you run Chamber of Vicious and try to get it that way. Or maybe you don't run the deck at all because it's still not going to be any good. But so anyways, how much of a difference is the 1 mana going to make on this card for Twist? Probably not. I would assume maybe because of Chamber, but really you're not going to do this to summon more Dynamancers in Twist. You're going to do it to summon hopefully like a Doomguard or something. Might be all right. Maybe with Cho'Gall and Arena Lock that's built around discard, you could do something, but I don't have a lot of faith in it. For Warrior, we have Molten Blade, and it's getting kind of a subtle but good change. Transforms into a new weapon when in hand that changes each turn. The wording change means that the turn you draw it, it's going to be a new weapon. It's not going to sit there for a turn as a 1 mana 1/1. You will get to right away play it as a new weapon, which could be enough in Twist. Obviously in Wild there's too many bad weapons. I think that you would only be playing this for fun, but in Twist I think definitely that could make the difference. Maybe it'll be an interesting card. Explorer Ungoro is getting an interesting change. So now the discover a card tokens that it changes your deck into are going to cost 0, which probably isn't going to be enough to make this like anything, right? Like who cares about discovering a card off the top every turn? But it does mean that you can't go Togwaggle Geist anymore. The old combo was to Togwaggle, steal your opponent's deck, change their deck with Explore Ungoro in the same turn, and then they have no deck because you've drawn your whole deck. They can switch back, but then you Geist them and they don't have a deck anymore. So you can't do that anymore. That was like the one use of this. And Auctioneer's been nerfed again, so like you could play Auctioneer after having done this and then just like draw a ton of cards because all of the cards in your deck are 0 mana, but that's now a turn later. But I don't know, so like 7 mana for a 4/4, draw like 8 cards. How good is that? I don't know. It's interesting. Sudden Genesis is going down in mana. Not sure, this could be really good. This could still be unplayable. Direhorn Hatchling is getting an additional attack as well as shuffling in a bigger Direhorn. The upfront attack increase is nice, but the token is going from a 6/9 to an 8/12. That is a huge buff for the token. Maybe we can play some N'Zoth Taunt Warrior or something. Ornery Direhorn is going from a 5/5 to a 6/6. Interesting. Tarlord is going from 7 mana to 6 mana, which might actually be really strong in Twist. In Twist though, it's so easy to destroy minions, it's kind of hard to invest in a taunt minion that doesn't have a death rattle. And King Mosh is going from 9 mana to 7 mana, so you can still play it in Odd Warrior, but it's not a Baku. So I'm excited to play some Whirlwind plus King Mosh to clear some boards. That's gonna be sweet. Then for neutrals, we have Hive Queen, which has gone from a 2/3 to a 3/3, which is actually pretty interesting. I could see some decks playing this. Primal Fin Lookout is going from 3 mana to 2 mana, and I do think that 2 mana Discover a Murloc ought to be good for some decks. We haven't seen a Zoo Murloc deck in Wild in quite a while, but maybe this is good enough. Stubborn Gastropod is going from 2 health to 3 health. Not sure what to think of that. Volatile Elemental is getting a pretty big buff here, so it's going from a 1/1 to a 3/1, which might be pretty good. Bright-Eyed Scout is going from 4 mana to 3 mana. I don't know that that's the change I would have made. I think you want the stats on 4 to be better, maybe have taunt or something, because you go 4 into 5, right? I don't know that matters too much, but maybe 3 mana 3/4 draw a card is good. It really depends on what your curve looks like. Igneous Elemental is going from a 2/3 to a 3/3. This did see play at least in Quest Rogue back in the day, so I don't know that, given that this is a death rattle still, I don't know that it's enough, but it might be all right enough in like a Elemental Shaman. Stonehill Defender was not listed in the blog post, but it is getting a health bonus. The big thing with this one is it needed Discover to work like it used to. Back when this saw play, class cards had a 300% increased chance to be discovered when you discover anything. So when you play this, you would be getting, you know, Sunkeeper Tarim a lot of the time and stuff like that. Also, it could discover itself, so you could go Stonehill into Stonehill, and so like the effect of discover is generally worse than when this card saw play. So is the 1 extra health enough to make up for all that? Maybe, but I'm not super confident. That said, though, this is a much decreased pool of cards, so not only are your deck options lower, but the types of stuff it can find is going to be lower. I know from playing Warrior that the taunt pool is pretty cringe, so I'm gonna go ahead and assume that this isn't very good, even with this change. The Vorax, for those of you who have been following the Martian stream for a few years now, you know I like this card. So this used to cost 4, now it's going to cost 3. It's really fun with Libram Paladins. So you put the Librams on the Vorax and it makes plants that it puts Librams on, and so when you do that a couple times, you have a bunch more Librams. Katori kind of like blew this out of the water when it was printed as far as that effect goes, but now I think it's good enough that I could justify putting it back in and playing some like Turbo Libram Paladin. It should also be good enough to go in the Kaleidosaur deck, especially with the 0 mana adapt in Twist. So there's a lot to play with there. Firebloom Phoenix is going to deal 3 damage instead of just 2 now, and that's pretty good. It might be that the cards have been buffed past the point to where dealing 3 damage would have been enough, but this would have been cracked at the time. So it'll be interesting. I think it'll be fun to play with. Then Tolvir Stone Shaper is going from 3/5 to 3/6. One of the big reasons that this didn't really see play at the time is because it broke your elemental chain. So you play your elemental, you get to play this, and then next turn you can't play an elemental that required you to play an elemental the previous turn. It's made of stone, so maybe we could have swung it as an elemental if we wanted to actually push this card, but 4 mana 3/6 Taunt Divine Shield has got to be at least a little good, so maybe in Twist we can swing it. All right, so now we have the coolest change in the whole list. So Elise the Trailblazer is going to do the same thing she always has. She's going to shuffle the Ungoro pack into your deck, but now if your deck has no duplicates, you draw the pack. So she's a Highlander card. This is not only a buff for Highlander, because in Highlander you get to get the pack immediately. It's also a buff for any regular deck that would have played this, because it's exactly as good as it was for all those decks, but if you've drawn enough that you've run out of duplicates in your deck, you'll get to draw the pack. So yeah, overall a really cool change to the card. It's a buff for every deck that would have played it otherwise, and it makes it a Highlander card especially. So I'm super excited to play with this in Twist, and I'm also going to play it in Wild because I'm a glutton for punishment. Frozen Crusher is going from 6 mana to 5 mana. I don't know. 5 mana 8/8s tend to see a little bit of play. We are getting the Hydra, which did see a lot of play at the time as well, so maybe for an elemental deck you'll want to run this, but not getting to attack every other turn is a little stupid, so unless you have a way to silence, maybe it's not going to see any play. Hard to say. Servant of Kalamos is going from a 4/5 to a 5/5, but again, like, this is the 5-cost card, and Tolvir is not an elemental, so it's gonna be tough to curve elementals into this thing, which again was one of its bigger problems, but this did see play, so maybe it'll be good. Blazecaller is going from 7 mana to 6 mana. Now it doesn't conflict with the other shaman one, which I've already forgotten the name. It's Stone Sentinel, I think is what it's called. So you can play an elemental on 4, then get your Stonecaller effect, and then you can play Blazecaller and get that effect. And now Kalamos curves off of this, so like those curves might feel pretty good in Twist. I think all of this is a little bit too much for Wild now, as well. Like, it's pretty fair, right? Like I just described Curve Stone. I doubt the 6 mana 6/6 dealing 5 damage is going to matter a lot in Wild, but it's still a really cool change for Twist. Volcanosaur is going from 7 mana to 6 mana, and it is also an elemental now. It didn't used to be. You adapt and then adapt. Could be good in Twist, not going to see any play in Wild. Sated Threshodon is going to gain Taunt. So before it was just kind of a giant pile, it was an arena card, but now it gains Taunt and has a Death Rattle, so could be a N'Zoth card. Could also be way too expensive to ever see play, but there you go. It also got an extra health. It used to have 7 health. Osrook, which is one of my favorites, is going from a 5/5 to an 8/8. It's not my, like, I've never liked the card. I just like the character. Break yourselves upon my body. He's like iconic from Cataclysm. So I was pretty sad that his card in Ungoro fell so flat. But being an 8/8 as opposed to being a 5/5 is significantly better, especially considering you don't gain additional attack when you play elementals with him. So having that higher base attack means that protecting the body with playing a bunch of elementals the turn prior is going to matter a lot more. Generally, I've found that like the power level of Twist is a lot higher than I was expecting, especially the power of the power outliers, both in the original one and in this extra large one. The couple of decks that are really good are just like way ahead of the pack, and the general power level is way higher. So I'm not too optimistic that Osric is going to see any play, but I am excited enough to try. We'll see how that goes. So Giant Mastodon is getting 2 more health. Might be good enough to see some play considering the new card that gets a beast and an elemental out of your deck for a death rattle. So like, I mean, just talking it out, you want to do better than that in wild at least than just having like a giant 6/12 that, you know, if you draw it, it's useless. How good will this be in Twist though? Not sure. I think it's probably still way too expensive to do anything. So yeah, that wraps up all of the new stuff we're getting this patch. This is already live as far as the changes to the Ungoro card, so you can play with these right now. I'm going to stream and make a video tomorrow. I don't know what to pick yet. I'm excited to play Highlander with Elise. I'm excited to play Elementals with Shaman. I'm excited to play Nazoth with the new card, the Turbo Libram Paladin with the Vorax. So I'm gonna play probably one of those, or if I like, as I'm looking through the cards, if I get excited for something else. But let me know in the comments if you're excited to see one of those sooner rather than later. Remember to like and subscribe to support the channel. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you so much for watching. Blah, ba-da, blah, ba-da, blah, blah, ba-da, blah, ba-da, blah, blah, ba-da, blah, ba-da, blah, blah, ba-da, blah, ba-da, blah.